Okay, how do you put the interior back in Miss Mary Ann's '69 Mustang Convertible is the question. First of all, I got the panel here, back quarter panel. You know, it drives me crazy when people don't clean this stuff up and paint it. It's, you know, you got it off the car. But anyway, there's lots of videos on here how you recover your seats and etc. But I didn't see any good ones that showed you how to get the back seats in and the trim in. So anyway, I'm going to kind of gently slip this in here. Okay, everything's over there. And everything looks pretty good. Now, I put these on here. This is a new fiberglass panel. The old one was all ripped apart. Mostly these tabs that hold this metal panel on break off. So anyway, to get everything lined up and the holes all where they go, these had drilled places, not drilled, but they were indents in the plastic. So obviously somebody had done a nice job of lining the holes up where they should go, because these two in here and this one back there exactly lined up. So the panel's in good shape. But the old panel, somebody had glued those tabs back on and everything was crooked and it didn't fit in. And the fitting of this to this is real tight. So I screwed this in here and here, here and there. Then I marked this, okay? And I marked it with a pencil, took it all back off, flipped it over, screwed this panel onto that panel to make sure I had it where it should go. Then I put the coverings, I painted this, and I screwed them all back together. But if you don't make sure you get that all aligned, it will not fit in there right. And what happens is you start twisting it, and as you twist it, you'll break the fiberglass. So there's a warning when you get these panels that only a professional fiberglass worker, I don't know that I've ever met one of those, but they're the only ones that were allowed to work on that. So I'll go ahead and get the screws in now. Okay, the screws we're talking about. The first one I put in, and I hope you can see it here, it's right here. And that's the first one I put in, and I leave all of these a little loose. So that's number one, goes on the inside of that weather trim. Then I go to the front here, and these two I put in, and you can see, I'm going to zoom in on them. They're got a little washer on the top of them, but I bought this kit online with all the screws for the interior, and so I was happy with it. So that is number two. You get those started. And then what I do is right inside there, you can see, I'll back off a little bit, but come in. Right here, this screw, and it's hard to get started if you got your convertible top down, but I can hand spin that in there. So that's number three, and we'll go on back around to the inside. And this is the last one I can do, and it's on the back of the panel. And you'll see I've got a pick in there. And I'm going to put this back on the selfie stick, and I'll show you how I get these screws started. Basically, I use this technique on about all of these holes, but if you take a pick and you find where your hole goes in, which my hole, you'll see it's right there, then I'll hold it. I'll get my screw. Hopefully, it'll go right in that hole. And since I've got all the other screws in, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this one all the way down. Just like that. So anyway, you can see with a pick you find your hole and you can kind of move your panel, but we'll go ahead and tighten the rest of these down. I had some pretty close up front. Get this one, and I don't know that it makes a difference of what order you tighten down in, but we'll talk about finishing off the doorknobs and such. Okay, get a light here, and you'll see on the inside there's a little plate, so the screw right here, and there's also one back on the back side here if we can see it under there, but maybe we can't. But anyway, as we look at that, there's one back have an Allen wrench in them. And anyway, you can see my Allen wrench there, but we're going to go ahead and I used the spring, the nice silver plate. Oops. I place them on there, kind of centering them. The object is to get it pressed down so I can get the head of that on it. Get that pressed in and tighten the Allen screw. I don't know how much of that you actually saw, but right, and you know, I clean those up. Screwdriver in there and kind of used it to wedge it in there. But that baby goes in there like that. And that should shut. And that's what she looks like. Now we'll go ahead and start working on the back seat, but first I'm going to vacuum and clean a little bit because this has got a lot of dust and stuff on it. That is a black epoxy primer that won't rust or anything that was used on the interior of this. I don't think that was totally original, but it won't ever rust. So we'll get the back seat and the seat belts here going. Okay, part of this back seat installation is I put the seat belts in. I guess Ralph Nader had the seatbelt thing going with the beginning of the safety. Now, I don't know how heavy, that's maybe 18 gauge steel, and there's a little plate riveted behind that or welded on. And I don't know that an accident, somebody wouldn't get their mast moving and pull that right out of there. But anyway, this gets a washer. And it's got this funny star thing on it, but anyway, I want to make sure that comes out the way I want it to. Look real good. They're original seat belts, and I took some black paint, and I'd take little bitty paint brushes and touch up, but anyway, you can tape off the silver, push it in, get some tape around it, but I painted that with some fabric paint. But I try to retain as many of the original parts as I can when I'm putting these back together. And of course, you gotta have a socket wrench with a special star socket on it like that to tighten them up. Now I'm going to go ahead and mention for the front ones, you get this stubby washer, you get well, of course the seat belt's going to go in there, and then you get this big old washer so the seat belts can actually move a little bit where they're mounted. The back ones are just screwed directly in. And they do not have this sleeve here on the bolts. They're just threaded all the way. So a heads up if you use them in the wrong place. And now we're ready to actually clip the back seat in. There's a rubber washer on these, and these are kind of a funky beveled head with some serrations on them. They're meant to seal so that you don't get a bunch of water coming up through your holes here. But we got one of those on each side, and you'll see these hooks up here. So that back seat's going to come in, hook on it, and then we're going to swing it in, missing the seat belts there, and then put our bolts in. You might notice that you've got to take that back seat out to get to your pump for your power top. So that's the last we're going to see of that for a while. I recently refilled it with fluid and put new lifts on each side, new cylinders. Okay, a few things here. You can see I put new sound deadening on the inside of this. I also took the trouble to take a wire brush, and actually I sandblasted these, but a lot of guys don't have a sandblaster. But I mean, I painted them with some rust resistant, paint, so they made them look a little better. Everyone I saw online, they were just using the old rusty frames and putting the stuff back on. So anyway, I added an inch of padding to these back seats because Ford didn't put a lot of padding in them. You can see I've hog ringed around here. This sound deadening also, I put it on here because it takes a lot of the noise from the back seat, which is just a hole behind the seat coming in. So this 1/4 inch sound deadening, and it's got the heat foil on it also. But I put that on the back seat just, I know that's not factory, but that gives me a little extra padding, and it actually helps with the sound quite a bit, even though a convertible, that's kind of funny, talking about sound, because they're always loud. You'll see these bars right here. That's where those hooks I talked about on the back, there's one on each side. That's one right here. And of course the screws I talked about at the bottom there and there will both go in there, those rubber sealing ones I talked about. So okay, you can see I've got those in there. Those are 3/8, and those are the ones at the bottom of the seat. And of course I did what I said. I put it on those tabs, slipped it in, and now we're going to do the back seat. And if you go on down here to the bottom, you'll see these kind of go in. So when you set the seat on them, you push them back, put some pressure on it, it snaps in right down here. As you can see, they're slanted, so they naturally kind of want to go in. Okay, we talked about putting those bolts in the bottom of the seat, but the other thing I need to mention here is these need to be pointed down. If you point them up, they end up behind the seat. So you'll see, I don't know if you can see up there, that one's pointed down, this one's pointed down. So anyway, if you don't get those on the final tightening tightened down, you're not going to be able to get your seat belts up through the bottom seat right. Okay, you can see the back seat here. That clip I just talked about, it's going to go over this bar on this side, and of course there's a bar on the other side here. So basically that just clips in. I did not put any sound deadening on this. It had foam in it, and I put an extra inch of foam. You can actually see it over here at the edge, but I think they made these back seats for kids or skinny people, and there was absolutely no padding on them, hardly, just a little bit of cotton. Okay, before you put the panel back in, whoops, that's a piece off my limo. This part here, the map light, of course, is going to go in. It's got these pieces on the edge that have to get a screw from behind. So this piece has to set in here, and these screws that gets in behind, they go right there. Somebody's pulled this one out, but you put that on there before you put your dash back up on there. So I'm going to go ahead and get the 3 screws there. Now to remove the dash, you simply take these 3 screws out at the bottom, and I'm going to touch this up right here with a little bit of plastic mend. Okay, some people ask, how do you get the dash in and out of these things? And first of all, I'm not going to take the instrument cluster out, but there's a screw here and a screw here. Actually, it's got a hex head on the top of it. It's not a screw. You got one here, you got one here, and then one right here. Then this instrument cluster will actually come forward. There's a, right below there you have to pinch it and pull it back. It is the cluster for the wiring. And then you can reach in and there's a clip, you squeeze it, and then you can pull the odometer cable comes off, and then that whole panel will lift out of there. So anyway, that's the instrument cluster, but I'm going to go get the dash there and we'll set it on in there. The problem you've got when you lift this in is you got this speaker down here. And so what I have to do is I have to go ahead and get my front right, front left. I'll do my front left first. And everybody's got a cheap AM speaker, but I happen to have one of these dual cone, two-sided speakers that they sell as a replacement, so you get a left side and a right side like you should with FM. Okay, got those on there. And then I'm simply going to lift this up there. And for now, I'm just going to set it there so I can dress the wires and stuff, and then I'll explain. I'm going to put some of the screws and get them started. Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I had a short, so I've had this dash in and out a couple of times. It ended up being the wire that runs to the lighting down there for the air conditioning and heating controls. Anyway, this is the screw. It's a black screw. It's got a Phillips round head. And get lucky. Yeah. And I'm just gonna, I've put the other 2 in there, but they're the same kind. One goes there and one goes there, and I left them real loose. I'm gonna leave all these loose. But that's funny, electrical problem, and it ended up after I checked the wiring diagram, the stuff off the dash lights, which I have LEDs in there, ran to the cigarette lighter with a light in it, and that was an option on these Mustangs to have a light in the cigarette lighter, and it also did that fan and heater control panel down there. Okay, this may not be the best picture in the world, but those 3 screws right there, and right there, zoom back a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. I boogered them up a little bit. I'm going to paint up. I'm going to touch that up with a black highlighter when I get done. But anyway, that's the next ones I put in, and once again I left those loose. Okay, the next step is going to take this right here, which it's got a washer built onto it, and it's a what I call a wood screw. But it goes right here, and I'm going to use my find the freaking hole. And once I get the hole, I'm going to hold that in place. I'm going to hopefully stick that in there, and then hopefully going to get that started. And once again, I'm going to get enough threads to make sure it doesn't pop out, but I'm going to leave that loose once again till I get done. I'm going to go do the other side with the same type of fastener. Okay, to finish putting a couple of screws in the dash here. Okay, right here you'll see these have the washer on them. They're a black screw. There's two, one right here and one right here. And I'm going to go ahead and put those in. And then the next thing I'm going to do is put this little light in here. This light is what lights up your instrument panel there for your air conditioner. This has in-dash air conditioning, so air conditioning and heating. And these things weren't quite plugged together. There's a short in there. My mom had problems with this car for years, and my dad tinkered at it, and I finally found where the short was. But this is going to go back through that hole, but it mounts right there. Right behind the off, there's a hole right there. So you get that, and it snaps in the hole. Then that wire is going to come out the back and come out down here. And this is the ashtray, and there's a light on the ashtray. And you'll note, I put little LED lights in here. I don't like the other ones. I went online and got some common LEDs that would fit in there right, and I went ahead and changed them over. But anyway, the one end of this is going to plug in here. Then there's one coming down from the dash, which I've already got back in there, that plugs into here. And I'll have to plug this cigarette lighter in. You can see it hanging down there. And there's basically, we're not going to be able to see these real well, but there's a screw coming up from the bottom that hold these in, and one from the front. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get these screws started. Okay, car junkies, what we got here is the radio I'm going to go ahead and put in. Now the radio in this car, I'm going to show you what I got. I got Bluetooth, and I got a speaker up there, or a microphone, so I believe it hands-free. It's just a little bit safer on the road. I put it in all my old cars. Okay, there's a bracket that comes on the old radio, and the back of this needs to be supported, and there's a rail in there that this clips into. So as you put it in, you're going to have some friction going in, and when you take it out, you got to pull on it a little bit to get it past these clips. And then as we insert it, these top two here, there's a little bump there that you got to get past. It's actually the ends of the screws for this. But you can push it down and get these past, and then you'll put two screws on the bottom there to hold the thing in. But I'm going to go ahead and get all these wires plugged back in. And you might note I've got little infinity speakers I made these little boxes for, and I put them under the seats. And I showed you my speaker up here, so I get pretty good sound in this old Mustang, and it's not really anything cutting the doors, windows. I'm not big on adding panels that have speakers in them and things like that. I like the hide my installation. This is also one of those radios that you can flip it like that and it looks like the old AM, and you go like that and it's an LED readout and it's got modern Bluetooth and all of that in it. And you can connect your iPad and all kinds of stuff in it, even though I don't bring those wires out. I just play music Bluetooth now. The other thing, I don't know if you can see this, but on these electrical plugs, I get a little piece of this heat shrink, and there's actually a nipple on the side of these on the original ones, and you can take a piece of heat shrink and shove it up on there like that, and then cut it off about there. And what happens is when you plug these together, it doesn't go all the way together, and there's a little piece of metal showing. And that's what shorted out down there. It got next to a piece of metal, and you know, that went in there. But anyway, if you cover those with a little bit, you can still plug them and unplug them. The next one I'm going to put in is this side piece. This hole right here lines up with the hole for the radio and blah, blah, blah. This piece of it, I think, gets back there, but it ends up, the screws in the top of your bezel for your radio here go through all the rest of these. So what I do, this is also keyed up here. It's got one of those little tabs. So you need to make sure you get it in. Okay, so I've got that one started in there. Go ahead and put the other side on, and then we'll put the radio bezel on and the knobs. Okay, this is kind of cool. You know, they were too cheap to put a connector on, so they put some threaded rods in here or something. And there's two holes right here and here, and it's a friction fit, so when you take those off, they come straight out. But the only screws in them are these two in the top, and the thing goes in up at the top first, and kind of, you might have to flip some of your knobs up, but you find those holes there, and them go ratchety, ratchety, ratchety. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get that top one screws in, and those screws are these black ones, and they're probably an inch long, but anyway, we'll get those in those top two holes, and then we can stick the knobs back on there. Okay, this will be interesting. This is a test of the LED lights. No, what do we get there? Oh yeah, we get a little LED lights, but anyway, they seem to be working. My short is unshorted. Okay, while I was in here with all of my little LED lights, I figured I would put one of these new LED lights, and I bought these for my Rolls Royce, but they're exactly the same size as these, and I can't read a number on that, but that goes in here. Why can't I get it in there? That's why I can't get it in there. And there's a little hole right on the back of the shifter right there. And that sucker pops right in there, just like that. You need to make sure you don't get your wires there, where your shifter's gonna cut them coming back and forth. And I got a new little package of shifter floor things, so I'm gonna put those screws in there and tighten that down. But some of these lights are hard to get to, and anyway, that kind of completes that, and I think we got one kick panel left and a couple of seats and a console. Okay, I'm putting this trim piece on here, and the outside gets a kind of a beveled head, and the bottom gets one of these washer deals. But anyway, this is the piece of trim we're putting on. The bevel screw is going to go on the outside. This has got a little key there, and it slips under that. And if you don't get it in there right, it doesn't go up all the way. And if you don't... Okay, you can see I've got that up in there pretty good, but what I'd like to do is find the hole, and it's right there. So I'm going to go ahead and stick that in there, and that's the one with the washer on it. And I'm going to get it. Okay, I've got that little beveled one started in there. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten it down. You know, with plastic, you just want to snug them. You don't really want to horse them down. So I just get them to where they're nice and, you know, fingertip snug. It's in plastic, so it's kind of a retainer in itself. And now we'll do the ones, quarter panels, kick panels I should say, onto the car. And this is kind of finishing off around the dash, which is all now in and tightened down. This goes in, there's this thing which is gonna, I mean it's coming in and out for the vent. But it's going to slip back in this hole and up in there. And there's two holes in here, and you're not going to be able to see me get them started. But I got my trusty ice picks here, the big one and the small one. And it takes a long black Phillips headed screw. These have a good standoff on them, so they're really long screws. So I'm going to go ahead and get that shoved up in there. They go up in there about like that, and then I'll get the screw started. But, oh, they slip around the edge of this too, so you fight with them a little bit, you can get them up in there, but they are plastic, so you don't want to put too much pressure on them. And when I tighten those down again, I'm not going to really wrench down on those hard. I'm just going to snug them up to that plastic. Well, look at that door panel. Get a paintbrush and some model enamel from your local hobby store, and you can touch these up. They sell these, but I like keeping the originals, and they were in good shape. Of course, I got all new snaps, and you know, I put this in and it's got two little things that hold it, but I put some good cement around that to make sure I held it in. I went to my local auto paint store and got about 5 cans, I think it was a pint, but they mixed me cans of spray paint up that matched this, so I was able to touch up all the pieces. Now the secret to this thing is you need to pull the handle out. You put that in, or you can't get the damn thing in. And then there's holes that those clips go in. So you want to get them all started in the hole. And then you simply exert a little pressure on them. And there you go. So we'll get the door handle and top piece of trim here, and we'll get all of that put on there. One take without having to walk around the car. That selfie stick drives you nuts. First of all, I've got I think these are 3/8, and they go in the holes there, but these are 3/8, and I got those in my interior package, trim package. My originals that came out of here, which I don't know, I think one of them had been replaced anyway, but I'm going to get those shoved down in there. If you can see me getting them down in there. And but anyway, they had a Phillips screwdriver head, and I went ahead and took an ice pick and I poked a hole where those things. Okay, so I got all those started, so you got the general idea. And I'll tighten that on up, but got that started. But the other thing I was going to try to do in the same take, in some of the older Mustangs, this has little tabs on it that gets basically smashed into that and bent over. But this thing goes on there like that, and I'm not going to be able to do this. Okay, you can see this screw here, at least I hope you can see it. It's got a little washer kind of on it, built into it. There's two of these that hold this top plate on, and I use my little ice pick here to line my hole up, so I'm should be right there at my hole, like right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put that screw in there. Better if I went in there with something like a screwdriver. And these things tend to bump here in the back if they're not far enough forward. So I'm going to make sure I've got that pushed forward. And then I'm going to simply tighten both of those down, and I'm not going to over tighten them. But that holds the top of that panel down, and I think those pressed in ones, this was just as they got later in the years, they figured out ways to mass produce them and get them out of the factory faster. Next thing we'll do is get the door handle here. Okay, a little finishing touch on the door panels is you got to put your locking knob on. And I ran this tap up here. Let me see what size it is. But for some reason, these get all kinds of gunk and paint on them during the process of redoing a car. And they're 10 by 24 threads. Oh, that's a Craftsman tap. I've got all kinds of old taps I've collected over the years. But then this sucker will go on there a lot easier, so it screws down. But if you don't clean that off, it's real tough to get that screwed down all the way. Okay, just a little trick here on these. Some of this metal, and I've already went through and done all of these, but as the screw goes down, it pulls metal up. So if you get in there and get on the edge of it and beat it down a little bit, it smashes that hole smaller. And then your screw will not pull out. Some of those were big and the screws pulled out on them, so I went and did all of those on both sides. And voila, speaking of the other side, I've already got this one started on there. But basically, those 4 holes there that I was tapping in to make them smaller, you got 4 holes in the trim. And I polished those up a little bit. I used the originals. You can buy new ones. These are a nice shiny. I think they're actually chrome plated. But now that I got my holes smaller, somebody used a couple of big screws on this side that really kind of overdid it when it came to this trim. And you can see I can tighten that down good now without it losing thread. So just a pointer. Got that one in already. That one in. And then we got the last one. You can pull those down in aluminum too much, so once again I'm going to move over here and do the other side, but once again don't over tighten them because you'll bend the heck out of that aluminum and actually smash it, pull the screws through if you do it too much. So just get it down to where it's good and snug. Okay, if you've never heard of dum-dum, I call this dum-dum. Other people call it strip caulk 3M, but anyway, it comes in these nice long strips, and if you get a chunk of it, these hold the seat, front seats in, but what you want to do is you want to get this dum-dum and you put it in there. And I've done the rest of them, so I leave a hole in the middle because otherwise it gets all gooey on the end of the bolt. But it comes in strips so you can kind of mold it around there. I think any auto body store has that. Good for sealing holes. Okay, when I get under the car to do the seat bolts, they're 1/2 inch, but you need something long because I believe it's the front ones. They're way up in there, and I use this small socket just because the hole to get it in there, you can get it in there, but you don't want a big extension. It won't fit up in that hole right. So I use that to get it started, and then I'll put this baby on it right here and crank it tight. I like these smaller sockets anyway because you don't tend to over tighten stuff. So these have a kind of compression. You could tighten these down to where you crush these things, and that's not the intent. So you can't over tighten them. I keep trying to stress that. Okay, I'm over here by the car seat, the bottom of it anyway. You can see I painted all the springs and that kind of stuff. While you got it apart, you might as well do that. These are the studs here, which are going in and getting those bolts that we just put the goop in. So anyway, we'll flip that over in the car. Oh yeah. Gonna talk about these right here. There's a hole here, but basically you can see where that sets in. My hidden speaker here, I'm going to make sure I get that wire out of the way as I set it in. By the way, I've already set the other seat in there, so I'm going to get the bolts all on, or the nuts all on at the same time. Okay, I'm getting ready to put the nuts. Actually, I've already put the nuts on with the gooey stuff, dum-dum on them. They go in here, here, oops, here, here, here. And I'm going to try to zoom up in that hole there and get a flashlight. And you can kind of see that way up in there. And you can see that one way up in there. So, but these front ones, when I talked about it, you go through a couple of layers of steel, so you need a long extension to get to that bolt. But that's how you bolt the seats in, 4 of those. And see those round, bigger holes there, or the smaller holes of the 2 holes, the inside hole? There's a plastic cap that goes on those, and they're a bitch to get on. But anyway, I'm going to put the plastic caps on those. Okay, under those seats, I talked about those little holes. These plugs go in there, and you can kind of push them up in the middle and work them in and get them in that piece of metal. The ones that are in the front that go way up in there, my hands are just so big. Okay, continuing on the Mustang interior, these little nubby things go in there. They get a rubber end on them, like so, and that goes on the end, so I've already pressed it on there. That's not good. Do it the old-fashioned way. Drip a little on there. Yeah, it doesn't take much of this soap. It's mostly soap and very little. But I'm going to put that on there. It helps that slide in there. And you want to get about a 1/2 inch gap. So as that goes in there, I'm going to kind of pay close attention. I don't want it to slip too much. Sometimes you can yank it on down. You'll have a hard time getting it back out, is what I'm saying. Okay, that's what I ended up with there on that end. These are a little shorter than the ones that were originally in the car. And now I'm going to go over and press it on the longer one in the car and put a little soap on there like I did before. We'll move the camera. Okay, this is the spike it fits on here. You can see it's kind of got a pointed end. I went ahead on this other side and shoved it on there. You gotta kind of press on it and get it where you can get a good hold on it and twist it back and forth as you go. That's kind of, oops. That's kind of that on there. You can see the distances at each end. This is probably shaky, but it'll go up and latch in the middle. Okay, one of the last things I'm going to do here is put the snaps in on these back panels there. And what I do is I've got a screw in, and I'm going to put that where they go. I'm going to start with the front one. I make sure I've got everything kind of where it was supposed to go and where it's going to end up. I don't want it too far out. Then I'm going to take where the snap is, and I'm really going to push on it. Like that. Now it left an indentation there, which I can see. So I'm going to take and drill a hole right there in the middle of it. Then I'll go ahead and screw my snap in. I repeat that for the 3 snaps on each side. That way they fit properly. If you try to do it with the pattern off the old sides, somebody had glued them all together and they didn't fit in right. So after I got them fitting in right, that way you make your top just snug down the way it should. Okay, you can see I've got that lined up pretty well. It's straight on there. Got a snap there, a snap there, and a snap there. And if you get them all in the right place, they go on right there, pretty easy, just like that. Not a lot of stretching and all. Well, you do want to make sure you get it tight enough to hold this plastic under. both sides, but that basically completes the operation here of the interior of a Mustang, 69 Mustang Convertible, done for my wife. Okay, finally I am done with the dash, the interior, but I think this is how a 69 Mustang was supposed to look. And I hope anybody that watches this video will appreciate the effort I put into making it, because I'm not normally a Mustang guy. I used to work on a lot of them as kids and worked in a shop through college, and now it seems like I work on one of these old American cars. It's like I'm on the clock. Those old Rollses, I don't feel that way about. They're just patience. I get a lot of patience with them. But there you go, and maybe we can move back a little bit so you can see the rest of the Mustang. Yeah. Come up this side and look around here. Go ahead and shut that door, and of course we got blue on blue here with the rolls and the Mustang, but I think that's a good looking car. I polished those hubcaps up real good, with all the stickers under the hood, but that's pretty well a restored 69 Mustang at this point. Yeah, here's under the hood. You can see all the stickers and stuff on there. Yeah, this was my mama's car. I got caught racing it right after she got it. Bought it from a little old lady up the street with no miles on it. So anyway, I got caught drag racing it with a guy had a 289 and thought he was hot. I had the big block and I was going to show him. So the mothers of the neighborhood saw us, and I wasn't allowed to drive it again, and I don't think I drove it for another 40 years until it was redone. So I got grounded from this car as a teenager. Wasn't that a pity? Yeah, here's kind of in the boot there. I don't know, there's not a lot to see. There are a couple of labels up on that, up there you might take note of, but basically the trump's a very simple deal. Yeah, and finally here's a shot. I went in and put the top up. One thing to note, this cover for the back, I leave it zipped across the back there, that rubber that pushes in, and I throw it down in the well. You got to remember it's in there before you start taking the top down, or it'd probably rip the hell out of it. But anyway, there she is. Interior completed, my satisfaction.